All right, thank you so much for joining everyone, both in person and online. Today we'll have this little keynote where I will both go through a bunch of introduction to this concept of AI safety startups and trying to make an impact in the real world with some of the technical research that some of us do day to day, and trying to make it into the real world as well in a scalable fashion. And then afterwards, I'll be talking a little bit about the logistics of the hackathon coming through this weekend. And in between, we'll have a short Q&A for anyone's questions to come through about the first part as well. And I hope everyone can hear me fine. In person, it looks like that should be fine, and online as well. I'll repeat anything that comes through on my side here, and repeat it for everyone online as well, so we can all hear it. So this is, of course, the for-profit technical AI safety startups hackathon, where we are going to hack away on a bunch of ambitious ideas for how to solve some of the big problems coming up in the next 1 to 3 years, and trying to make that into scalable research projects that can actually be put into production deployments, change the security landscape, and so on and so forth. So, how can we get research into the real world? One of the things we want to start with, of course, is to set the stage right a little bit. So let's first come around with some of the assumptions that we have for this talk. First off, there is just a chance, it looks like, that AI will be able to cause an existential catastrophe for humanity, either over the next century or in any time frame that goes slightly beyond that. But there is just a big chance for this. And so in that sense, it resembles a lot of other transformative technologies that have these sort of wide-ranging implications. And you can see here on the right, you can see question 1, what probability do you put on future AI advances causing human extinction? And this is 47% of 2,700 AI safety or AI researchers generally who have published at top conferences in machine learning who responded to this survey. So 47% of those believe this over the next century, which of course is quite surprising and shouldn't be taken as evidence in and of itself. But it is some sort of subjective degree of this being a real thing in the field as well. The second part is that, of course, besides the startup work that we'll be talking about and we'll be working a bit on during this weekend, policy and research is happening. Apart Research has done a lot of research, hence the name, and policy is happening a lot of places over the world. So you can see here on the right, you have a big bill coming in California, trying to make sure that AI is developed sustainably with some of the big tech companies there, and trying to make sure that it doesn't go amok. And on the other side, we also have non-profits working on making sure that experts' voices are heard, similar to these surveys that I showed before, but your statement on AI risk. And then there's a lot of other direct policy work happening, and also research for policy and research going into the technical field itself. Unfortunately, we think there is, despite this big list of companies right now, there is still too little differential AI safety progress happening, in the sense that we don't see as many people really building AI safety products that change the security landscape or the safety landscape in AI safety terminology. To the degree that we'd like to see when we have these massive companies developing AI capabilities. And this just means that despite this being a big problem, there isn't enough technology being developed to mitigate the big risks that we are often talking about in research and in policy. For example, I mean, we can publish a lot of really solid papers, and they will be used by engineering teams at AGI labs, they will be used by researchers on new research. But we want to see this also make its way into transforming the AI space instead of being a component of the AI space, to the degree that we can trust the safety of the technology we deploy. On the right here, you see a bunch of companies that have been mapped by the AI assurance tech, I think, something like that report. But the AI assurance field is a corporate term for AI safety, basically. And all these companies are working to some capacity with it. And despite that, it's still many more companies working with capabilities today, right? Every company in the world is to some degree developing and deploying AI. And here we see maybe a few of these, maybe 20% or so, are really working on things we would deem projects that reduce some of these existential risk concerns and some of the more like cascading catastrophic risk concerns that we might look for. But it's a really good report, and we also put it in the resources list if you want to check more of these out. And then the other one is that new technology just does change the world. In the same way that when we do research and put a new paper into the world, that paper actually introduces a new idea and changes our concept space, changes how we see the world. Technology can change how that world works fundamentally. And if there are new ideas, completely new ideas in the technology as well, these deeply technical projects, not just a new web app or something like this, but deeply technical projects that really change a core component of our technology, then that can that can change our future. And we've seen this again and again throughout time, right? With some of the ways that we've safeguarded rockets, in this case the Apollo missions, and in the way that fine-tuning was developed to work with AGIs that are deployed today, so large language models, and how they are trained to be more human-like or more human-friendly. So these are some of the examples, and it just changes the world when a new technology is implemented, which is one of the big, awesome things that we can do as technical folks. Now, this is a bit of a controversial graph, but it sort of illustrates the idea pretty well. AI progress goes up over time. This is from the Situational Awareness Report by Leopold Aschenbrenner. And there on the right, it becomes more intelligent as this happens. And so we expect that these agents will begin being deployed in the world because they can begin to replace human labor, and human-level agents can actually do tasks that we might do day to day. And so let's zoom in a little bit. We have a few different steps on this graph. So here we have from 2022 to 2027. And first off, 2022, we had a time, it was a bit too early for startups. It was, however, just the right time to start our hackathons. Shameless plug. And then in 2023, we had more global recognition, and it was the right time to begin starting these evals companies that were more about monitoring and less about intervening directly into the security space or safety space. You have examples with Anthropic that actually, changed how safety is done, but there's still a lab to create artificial general intelligence either way. So in that sense, it's not intervening in the structure of how AGI would be deployed, besides being an actor deploying AGI. And now here in 2024, the hypothesis is that it's actually now the time to really build these AI safety companies, because now we can come with our principled backgrounds in research within the AI safety space, with our views on how AI will be developed and deployed across the world that are quite unique and quite a different perspective, and come with a principled thinking and figure out, given the world that we expect in 2 to 3 years, what are the technologies we should begin building now? And what are the steps we can take towards being ready during that time? And so that's the hypothesis there, where some of the things we of course want to get ready for are these billions of human-level agents flying around on the web all the time. It is potentially new findings, changing AI architectures fundamentally. And then we have to create a new system for our interpretability or something like this. It might even be super intelligent agents later down the line that can self-improve, that are run by a few independent actors, for example, Sam Altman or OpenAI, that we might expect. And then in that field, we would hope that being here now and building these startups now is the time where we can then be part of that evolution that happens during the change for AIs being deployed. And really, both bring value to the world in terms of safety, but also bring value to the organization so it can scale around this research project that is not necessarily, we use technology and research a little bit interchangeably here, but can actually scale this concept that changes the world fundamentally. And it sounds grand, but it's just like you introduce a new idea, the world changes. And then on one other side, we have this concept of AI capabilities, the development of AI, versus AI safety investments. This is a bit of a caricatured graph, hence the scribbly-scrabbly style. But what you can see is that you have $67 billion in AI for-profit investments, and you have quite few funds going to AI safety research, because this is in the nonprofit space. Today, if you included some of the ones that would say they're working on safety as well, you might increase this graph more, but then you would also quite quickly increase this graph to include a bunch of other companies that are doing something with AI. And so the question is, what can we do about that question mark? And supposedly in 2030, this market will indeed be $276 billion, according to this AI assurance report, that is projecting from current trends what that market will look like. So I think today they say that that market is just around 1.3 billion, I believe, or like something quite high, because it's already being, there's already a lot of cybersecurity companies, and these companies you saw on the big list that are working with the security of AI systems. But this is the markets we're looking into. This is the sort of growth potential we can put into our ideas. And some successful examples, just to give a few thoughts on, or give you some understanding of what exists out there today. So one of them is Lakera, who some of you might know. I think there are around maybe 100, 150 people now. They work on this Lakera Guard. That is their main product. And that is a filtering system that when you query a large language model, then the filtering system goes in and says, is this a jailbreak? Is this something malicious? Is this something that we don't want into our system? And vice versa, sometimes also detecting, does the model output something that we actually don't want it to output? And sometimes you might see in your ChatGPT interface or something similar that it begins writing something and then it's like, oh no, actually I can't answer this. And that's probably something along the lines of the Lakera Guard working there. And they're of course getting a really unique opportunity to work with a lot of the risks that we see in this interface between humans and AI, and can actually intervene there and change how safe it is for a user. And yeah, that's like a good example. Another one that we'll also hear a bit more about tomorrow, so I thought we'd feature them here as well, is Lucas's Vector View. And this is a YC startup, an example of several of these evaluation startups that have come up in, from the 2023 nonprofit work with Meter, with AI Safety Institute coming in as well, and now these startups happening. And Vector View is one example of this as well. So they've worked a little bit with Meter, with some of the task standards, and have then finished their Y Combinator cohort, and working as a seed stage startup basically towards evaluating models well. Another example is Haze Labs. This is somewhat similar. I believe they already have a dashboard as well, so a place where you can automatically jailbreak your own models. You can put in your API key to your model on some random server, and it'll say, hey, is it safe against these 1,500 attacks or something like this? And this is also from some people in the AI safety field and some people that we know as well. And it's just super interesting to see like a pretty young team do something that there's a lot of interest in from both investors, from everyone in the field too, and then productize it to this degree. The last example is also Goodfire.ai. There are a couple more like pretty high profile ones, but these are more safety focused than them. But Goodfire.ai with Eric, who runs that as CEO, they just got a $7 million investment round to build out interpretability. So this is that part of AI safety where we're trying to make models much more transparent. And they have a big plan around that. I'm not sure how much is public, but that they got a bunch of money to do it really well. And we should probably expect them to do it really well because they are quite competent. So he was previously, he had just raised a round of 100 million in another startup and then quit to do this Goodfire.ai. So in that sense, that tells you something. So these are some pretty solid examples of what companies today might look like. Now, when we look at AI safety startups, what is the difference between those and then something like a simple, like a web app, like a for-profit startup? What are the differences we need to keep in mind? I would direct you to either Y Combinator's YouTube channel to learn about startups in general, or even to Rudolph's talk from yesterday, where he gave a few quotes from some startup founders and some of the people in the milieu about what you should think about as a founder. I'll also give a few at the end, but that there's loads of resources on how to be a founder and how to do startups, and definitely think you should check it out. But here I'll just go quickly through some of the things that are quite unique, and I'm sure there's many more. But one of them is, of course, governance. Here we have Sam Altman. There was a little boardroom drama where the board thought he was not trustworthy enough. I think was the final statement that he wasn't trustworthy enough to actually be the CEO because he didn't report properly to them, and they couldn't fulfill their mission of being the ones to close OpenAI down basically if they were to develop a very, very dangerous agent. And today that board and that governance structure has sort of fallen a little bit apart. And here on the right, we see the Anthropic setup for how they work as well. And they have these preferred shares where they have higher voting rights than all the investors. So they can keep staying aligned, basically, hypothetically. But there's another part to this where governance might not be enough, because we've seen it fail with OpenAI, and really money talks in many cases. And therefore, there's a question of how can you make sure that your impact aligns with your profit incentives. In this case, if you start out with only I guess 99% similarity between your profit path and your alignment path, like a path to impact, then the money is still going to talk quite quickly, unless you are very, very principled about how you want to say no to contracts that are not safety focused, and how you want to make sure that your research team is well supported. But once you're in a money crunch at some point, you're going to choose the thing that makes money because it's instrumentally useful. And you can see here that the farther you then go out, this red line, well, that's the oof part. That's the oof, the thing we want to avoid. And so you always want to try to make sure that they come as close as possible, this like profit to impact thing. And it is one of the places where I personally think that we can ensure the most amount of safety from these organizations, because there is generally a risk that a for-profit company can turn towards more profit-seeking than safety-seeking solutions once they grow big enough and have a high enough burn rate, and so on and so forth. And one other part is actually that we have a really, really unique community. It's been super exciting for us to talk with some of the startups in the space and how open they are to sharing all their information with us, because we're here trying to solve a massive problem together. And I think, if anything, this is what I would love for people to take home with them as well from this talk, or sit at home and take into their brains from this talk. Basically, that we are here to solve a massive problem, and each company is solving one of these big problems that come up, and solving a big need that we have for the future with general artificial intelligence. And so we should just share knowledge. We should just be here for each other. We should make sure we help each other. Of course, there are some aspects of startup that are still secret and so on and so forth, of course. But it is a really unique opportunity to actually interact, for example, in a space like this hackathon, and be together with so many people who really want to do something ambitious here, instead of keeping it under wraps and having all their post-its on some locked folder. So I think that is definitely a place where you can reach out to everyone, and it's a unique like globally spanning network that's really strong, and maybe something you want to keep in mind as you chat with folks here as well. Nice. So just jumping through a few more example ideas of what you could be working on this weekend. I've stolen all the ones that were in the projects and teams channel, so you can see that there's actually stuff happening in there, and jump in there and join teams and coordinate around them, and even post new ideas. But we see here that one category includes these security interventions against AIs that become misaligned. So there we have potentially a company that specializes in making sure that AIs cannot escape their box or their confinement. And this will just, given that we have this principled view that superintelligence will become a thing in the future, then we would expect that this just becomes a practical engineering problem. You want to contain this really, really intelligent being within algorithm within your system, and therefore you need someone who's super specialized. There's the misinformation, disinformation detector. This is also an intervention into, okay, there is some misalignment that will happen. We need someone to intervene in this, and you have just make sure that it doesn't provide misinformation and so on. Similarly, make sure that pre-deployment testing of AI-written code, for example, that is one place where if an AI writes a bunch of code and you just trust it and it has created your whole code base, then what's to say that it hasn't implemented like a send 1 cent every minute to my Stripe account, and make sure that I can escape onto this Docker container somewhere hidden within the code of this application that will now be deployed. So these are a couple of those ideas that will be necessary. And you can see that there's also a path to commercial viability in each of those. Another category is sort of solving research questions through some lucrative industry. So we have, for example, risk assessment for specific AI agents. This is a point where you want to create an insurance company, basically, for AI agents. So you insure companies against critical failures of AI agents. And what this means is that, similar to insurance companies today, they spend a lot of money on mathematicians just sitting, calculating how likely is it that someone will get hurt in this situation, and that this profile, what's the risk profile of that house, this area, and so on. They will also need to know a lot about what risks are hidden inside these agents and what are the things we need to look out for. And similar, you have more forecasting aspects there as well. And you also have these the interpretability projects that Goodfire.ai has been working on now. That's definitely not going to be a saturated industry, so there can definitely be multiple of those. A research project we had, for example, was Deep Decipher, so that's the one up there. We published that a year ago soon. And that can actually just be commercialized to some degree, and is in this category of solving transparency problems and reliability problems within models using interpretability, and then solving transparency in models at the same time, right? Because it is necessary for the business case to be there in the first place. And you also just have changing how systems work for safety's sake. And systems here also meaning infrastructure, so both agents, but also which sort of networks of agents exist, right? So on the left here you have an idea where you assign, a unique range of IPs to agents. So any service, any API that gets queried from agents can actually check if it's an agent or not, and then there might be some parallel network as well. For some separate network for the agents to traverse that is based on APIs. So you can potentially see the actual MVP like a Sapien on steroids, only with AIs inside it. And what are the sorts of communication protocols between agents, but also within agents? And then you can maybe say, okay, I as Facebook.com, I don't want any agents that don't have level 5 communication protocol security or something like this. And there's multiple versions of that as well. So another one is just like taking what Cloudflare does for the internet and then doing it for agents, whatever that means. And there's probably a lot of good stuff. And then you have more also just like evaluations 2.0. Now we've seen a bunch of the evaluation companies coming out now. They use benchmarks, they handwrite benchmarks, and they do a lot of consultancy works with companies, and some of them are doing principle like red teaming, attacking, automated red teaming, these sorts of projects. But there's also devising like benchmarks that can be auto-generated by a system. So I can just specify what my new fine-tuned system for pharma on specific protein structures. Then, I want a data set that can evaluate my model for this, and then it just generates a whole thing like a whole testing suite for that specific case. That might be an idea. But also generating some sort of behavior profiles for agents and doing agent evaluation, which there is like very, very little work on these days, because agents are so complex. So it's like studying humans, but humans that can constantly change and be split apart and so on. But understanding what sort of behaviors come up and where can we really figure out when they are becoming a risk. It sort of hooks a little bit back to the AI insurance part as well. But these are some of the ideas that are live as well. And I didn't want to take any of the great ideas that Rudolf also mentioned yesterday. So I'll recommend you check that short lightning talk from him out as well. And he had a few good projects to talk about too. Now, it is many big problems, so we need many big companies basically. Lakera is a big company it's a very big company compared to AI safety organizations, right? In general, non-profits usually, very small, 10 to 50 people or so. And they've of course been quite ambitious and really hired and scaled and changed their CEO to someone very reputable. And they're going really hard, really prioritizing this Lakera Guard product because they see a lot of traction and a lot of value added right now on the security front, besides keeping up their research side as well and making sure that they keep improving these jailbreak analyses and so on that they run. So a big recommendation here is just, stay ambitious. We want to solve some of the biggest challenges here with AI safety. And we want to also try to do this counterfactually, just meaning that this differential technology development where we want to create technologies that the market wouldn't naturally create without us. And this can either be just from us being very principled in our technological development and from our research perspective, but it can also be from doing something that is a little bit out of the line, or that others would look at and be like, well, how's that going to be relevant? And then it becomes extremely relevant within 9 months or so. Another part is, a good question to ask yourself is, with this project, where would you want to be in 3 years? And then why can't you get there in 3 months? I think that's a pretty classic question. But in this case, we're going to reduce that to 2 days. How can you get there in 2 days? But figuring out where would you want to take this project to really have that impact on the problem you're looking at. And figuring out how can I get to something that looks like what that might look like within these 2 days, or at least describe it well. And of course, get some ideas, get some quick ideas in. That's just hackathon specific, but get some quick ideas in, and then preferably just execute on one of the early ones you get instead of like considering it too much. It's really important, the idea in this case specifically, but you also want to just hack away and see what happens. And then on the other side, while you're figuring out what are the sorts of problems that emerge when we do this work, you end up splitting into a bunch of interesting paths where you'll then converge on maybe the real right project, right? So getting your hands dirty and figuring out, like writing quickly and understanding what the field looks like, reading some of the resources, highly recommended before doing something concrete. And of course, this is a great amount of people who are really interested in AI safety startups. I know a big problem for founders in general is this co-founder matching. Of course, we've tried to make this ideas first connection between people from the projects and teams channel, forum channel on Discord, available for you, so you can connect over these ideas and try to work together during the weekend. But even with that, I recommend staying in touch and getting to know each other, both here in person, but also online as you chat together, DM together, and get on voice chats with each other. So it's a unique group of people with mixed interest between AI safety and startups here. So these might be some of the ones that are going to change the world in the future. To keep it on the down low. And then on our side, we also have a project. So there's a little bit of a sneak peek. A little bit of a sneak peek for you guys, but it's a project to incubate these sorts of for-profit organizations with the idea that we need these large companies for big problems. We're doing it because it's important. I don't know if I have to say too much else, but that's the short text, and maybe in the live stream you can pause if you're interested in reading more. So now I just invite questions for this little section of the hackathon intro keynote. Nice. And you're of course welcome to both raise your hand online, but also just write in the chat if there's anything. And any questions here?
Before the lecture, I was thinking about it. But do you see any analogies with the rise of AI safety startups? And maybe between this and the rise of startups over the last 20 years, and is there some lessons that you could take in from those startups? And is there any intersection, anything between the two?
Nice. I think it's a great question, and also one I've had myself. I'll just repeat it here. Is there any relation between the development of sustainability startups during the last 20 years compared to this interest in actually making AI safety startups as well? If I got your question right. And I think sustainability, there's both been, I think the main thing is that they're got economic power in the back of these organizations, and then they will happen. Then the startups will happen. If there is some sort of buy-in from governments with big grants, or if there is some sort of VC buy-in, then suddenly it will happen now. And this is some of the people we talk with and some of our partners are also trying to just put the money on the table and make sure that people who are gonna now work on AI safety don't look at it and are like, oh damn, how am I gonna get any money for it, and then never do it right. So this feels like the biggest part of it. And on the social side, in terms of social impact of startups, I think it's a change we've seen a lot. I mean, coming from Denmark, for example, it feels like every startup that's starting these days is an impact startup in some way, and they're like solving some problem about fashion or solving some problem about sustainability. And in this sense, it's really a cultural development, I think, as well, compared to the 60s boom of a lot of just, yeah, well, reckless capitalism, you might call it, spurred on by some of the post-war period and 1900s as well. Great. I'll invite Amir to speak as well, if you jump on stage. I'm not sure
if there's any plans.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, continue the hackathon for specific projects or ideas that have high potential. Thank you.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Sorry, I wrote it down also in the comments. And I wanted to ask if there's any plans to continue the hackathon for projects or ideas with high potential. Maybe they're to investors that's related. Thank you.
Yeah, so some of the incubation work will indeed probably come out of what happens here at the hackathon. The hackathon itself is also a pilot experiment in understanding what are the sorts of ideas that will come out of this process. And we'll definitely be, looking through all the projects, and we have the amazing judges from Momentum, from Juniper Ventures, from a lot of other organizations that are super interested in this too, and they'll be looking through the projects, reviewing them. So you'll definitely get exposure in the first place. So and that's beside us also looking for this incubation round. Nice. Are there any questions here in the room? Nope, perfect. Then we have another question from Nancy. So Nancy asks if we are submitting a vertical slice as well. I'll take that in the next part of the talk, which is more about the logistics for this hackathon. Artie asks, how deep do you expect the analysis should be in terms of economic feasibility and feasibility based on ML technical research? So this is really, it should be to a level that it's convincing enough, I think, just because it is a weekend project. We don't have unrealistic expectations, but you can do a lot in a weekend as well, I think. If you focus on one, it should be the feasibility based on ML technical research. It should be the feasibility of the technical intervention itself. That is definitely what should be the bigger focus. If you are and the technical intervention on an important problem specifically. So it's the problem and it's the technical intervention to focus on. And if you're solving a big enough problem, commercialization is a matter of either the world realizing or like reformulating the sales pitch or something like this. Yeah. Perfect. One last question here for the keynote. Nope. All right. Then we'll jump into the hackathon logistics slides. And thank you so much for listening to this part. Great. Bam. So for this weekend, we have a good little schedule. It is also on the website. Let's see if it is. It looks like it hasn't copied over the images, but that's we'll live with that for now. We'll have the keynote today. There'll be a bit of a virtual mixer as well, and we'll be chatting about some ideas here, hopefully on some whiteboards as well. Tomorrow we'll have a hack talk with Lucas from Vector, who has been through the Y Combinator loop and maybe has a bunch of interesting takes for everyone joining here about what that is like and how that helped him in terms of the AI safety project too, and what his thoughts are about it now. And then later in the evening we'll have office hours and hopefully be joined by some of the folks we have coming over from California also to judge and mentor there too. This is not the correct slides. That is why there is a fake image. Let me just figure this one out. Sorry about that. I'm gonna take it over to my other monitor. Ta-da. right. Coming up in a sec. Perfect. I expect everyone can see now. This should be the correct slides. Great. That makes more sense. Yeah, as I mentioned, this is the hackathon we're going through for. There we are. This is the correct schedule. This makes more sense. We have the keynote now, where I've now talked a bunch about AI safe startups and now just introducing you to the logistics, so you know what's going to happen. Hopefully you'll also be pretty informed from the website itself. Tomorrow we have that hack talk with Lucas at 1400 UTC. You can convert that to your local time. Here in London, for example, that's 3 p.m. And in Sweden, where he's sitting, that is 4 p.m. And then we have that office hour in the evening with people joining also from California. Sunday we also have office hour, and in general I recommend just going into the help desk, going into the Hacker chat, and discussing with each other. And there will be people available all the time, basically. Because it's so spread out, the office hours can sometimes not be super well scheduled. So this is the alternative, and we'll be available a lot and being more active in the Discord, like discussing your project with your teammates on the idea in the forum, in that projects and teams forum, is one way where you can very quickly get a lot of really good feedback from mentors joining in and just commenting on your project and being like, hey, I'm thinking this is what's up. What have you read this paper? Have you looked at this code, and so on and so forth? So really a good idea to stay online and connect with people there, and of course tag me, Min, some of the other folks joining us this weekend if you have any questions. Yes, and then Monday, that's what the little arrow means. Monday at 3 a.m. UTC, we will have the submission deadline. We expect that Sunday evening you'll end in your local time at some point. We'll at least close here at a reasonable time in the evening Sunday. But 3 p.m. so we also have the West Coast about 7 p.m. or so ending there at a reasonable time. Instead of them submitting at like 2 p.m. on a Sunday. And then afterwards, the submissions will be evaluated and reviewed, and we'll have some constructive reviews for all the projects there from the judges. And on Thursday, we'll then have the award ceremony and lightning talks from the top 4 projects about what it is. I guess here in the startup world, we might call it a pitch, an elevator pitch about their work there. Of course, deep tech, so maybe more research focused than otherwise. And your goal for the weekend is, of course, to create these new ideas for how we can scalably solve future problems of AI safety. And there's more details also in the submission template that's available on the website. But you have this 4-page document that you want to send in and submit on the submit page, where that document should detail what the problem is, what your proposed solution is technically, and then whatever. So the solution there, you're quite welcome to liberally change that document if you want, but it's a starting point, and and max 4 pages still. But it has a solution part where you have your proposed solution for how you're going to solve this problem that emerges in the future, but also your sort of experimental place or demonstration or vertical slice, in your case, Nancy, as well, where you can describe what did you experiment with to sort of show that this solution is possible. And we, of course, would be very, very happy if there are like either just graphs of results of some experiments that show that this approach is possible for some, deepfake detection schema or something like this, or some latent encryption. Then it's probably a research collab you want to put together. Or if it's some of this like separate network for agents, then you probably want to demo it and hook it up to a few APIs and then let an agent run on it and put some of the communication protocols together. So in these ways, showing that it's possible, or showing that there's some traction to the solution itself, and then refining that back and forth what your solution is with your MVP. We also asked you to list out some of the key risks, some of the processes that you're gonna go through if you were to develop this project further, and then what some of the key risks during that process is in terms of your specific idea. And this is just to make sure that you look at your project critically, and then you can improve it as well, and help both yourself and the judges see what the critical bottlenecks are, and then look at the solution and see if it's possible, basically. Perfect. And you're welcome to join in like teams of 1 to 5. It's really not that strict, so you can add or subtract people. Probably you cannot be 0 people. That would be very hard. You are welcome to submit multiple projects. I don't expect, if you think that the projects will be both good, then you can. But I would very much discourage that. It is possible, but focus on one project and make that really good first. There are some resources under the resources tab. That is quite scarce right now, but we'll let it be up to you in terms of all the technical work. And if you have any questions about technical implementation of something, jump into the Hacker chat and then like ping us or just write it there and we'll see. I think a lot of brains here have a lot of random links in their head that they can easily link you to for random tutorials for various projects. And we're both hacking a bit virtually and in person. So you already see me here in standing in London. But we also have people in Paris and in Berkeley doing like official sites. While I think a lot of people across the world are joining. So I've seen people both from Los Angeles, Germany, some India, Philippines, I think as well. But just very well represented across the world. So really awesome to see everyone here. And if there are anyone joining us from the Asian region, then thank you for staying up late as well. This session is live streamed, so you should be able to see it afterwards too, which is the idea. And as I mentioned, there is the help desk channel for you to just ask any questions, but you also have these country-specific channels to coordinate. Are there anyone here in my city in like the southeast of India, where I live in a village of 1,000 people, anyone who's randomly also on the Alignment Jam Discord server, then maybe you can meet up and do a project together, right? Perfect. And the Apart Sprints, just to tell you about the projects in general, Apart Sprints are these monthly, generally, research hackathons. We're stepping a little bit outside of that framework now, but generally research hackathons on specific topics in AI safety. And we've seen that this is really useful for developing and making progress on some of the critical questions. And a lot of really solid projects if you want to get inspiration from what others have done before on the Sprints page as well. And we generally really appreciate your feedback to make this work because we are a non-profit research lab. So we're doing a lot of great work for you guys, and hopefully the other way we can just get a survey back or something, and we're happy. And that helps us a lot in understanding where we have an impact and how we can improve. And we are currently in the accelerating AI safety season. So this one is scaling big projects. Another one was accelerating and augmenting AI safety researchers themselves. And then we have a Concordia challenge next weekend with Cooperative AI Foundation 2. That is a little bit outside of the season, but we're working with them to test also a competition for NeurIPS on like how cooperative agents interact in training environments, and then you write a prompt that works in all the training environments, but then they test it on their testing set of environments. So it's pretty cool. You can hypothetically join without coding experience. Sometimes that's not completely the case, but I hope that's I think that should be the case here. You can just write a prompt that makes them more cooperative, basically. And you can find previous challenges and projects and get inspired and so on the Sprints page there. Perfect. That's the Sprints page. There you go. And you have the little overview of the different places we've had locations here on the right, and that's some of the people who participated in 2023. Nice. Submitting your project, it should all be available on the website now and should be live. If it's not, please do shout or type in the help desk channel, and we'll immediately make all information available that might be missing somewhere. You've also received emails. They are now also live on the emails tab, so you can recheck those and make sure that you're not missing any information that was sent out to people before you signed up, maybe, or during some of that time. Under the submit tab, you will have this. Maybe I have this section. No, but you will have this form where you upload your presentation. Which is, or not a presentation, you upload your PDF and you put a link to your code, you put any other links in there, maybe your demo link, and then it works, and you submit, and you've submitted, and then it's live on the entries page afterwards. So there will be a lot of just a lot of pretty awesome projects coming out of this. And we've previously, as mentioned, because we do this research hackathon structure, we've previously run a lot of the Apart Lab accelerator for researchers. So this process where we work with a bunch of individuals to accelerate their career impact on AI safety. And a lot of the papers we published have been with folks like that coming in through the hackathons, joining us there. In this case, we're looking at this incubation project a little bit in a similar fashion, but of course a completely different type of project, but taking that 2 years of experience working with research acceleration and now taking it into incubation as well. Maybe if some of it is more research, you might also touch base with that. Nice. That's some of the folks. And of course, we have some great prizes here. We have $2,000 to give out, and that's sponsored by us through our great funders that we're really grateful for support from. And $1,000 goes to the first place team. $600 goes to the second prize. Is the second prize, $300 to the third prize, and $100 for the fourth prize. And you can see all the individuals joining us over here on the right, helping us review the projects and make sure they work well. So yeah, a lot of great folks, good people who have done a bunch of startups before, have done a bunch of money moving before. So a little bit of this and that in terms of who will check out your projects. And the hackathon spirit itself, remember to keep that alive as you're going through the weekend. You'll probably be surprised to see how much you can get done when you have fun. And just dive into the projects, make it happen, make a bunch of, just write things down and coordinate with your team about whether you want to drink energy drinks and make the whole weekend fly away, or if you want to make this more of a learning project. But generally just like align with your team and make sure that you have fun during the process. Nice. And I already mentioned this projects and teams channel, but you can really see there's already a bunch in there, and I've presented a lot of them, so I don't want to go too much in depth, but you can jump in, you can type things. There's already some conversations going on in some of the ideas, so I highly recommend that and figuring out what you're excited about. Nice. There we are. So now the second Q&A. Isn't that exciting for some of the logistics? Are there anyone who have any questions here?
Are there any
Yes. Yeah. So are there any criteria that the judges will look at? The criteria should be on the website, the overview pane. We'll also add it to the submit page now that you mentioned it, just to make sure that it's visible as you're thinking about submission. And there's three categories. So it's on the AI safety, it's on like the intervention and problem it's solving, and then just like how well it does it. Methods, I guess.
I was wondering if someone just did a demo project and website, do you still require them to write up?
Yeah, so I mean, if you focus on developing the technical projects and the MVP or vertical slice, then just use the report. You can just write 1.5 page and link and put a screenshot there. Because it is quite an interesting exercise to figure out what sort of problem are you solving and what solution does that require. I would expect that you would lose quite a bit from only doing this. So I would recommend just using the submission document as a way to think through your idea and why it matters as well. Nice. If there aren't any other questions, then I believe we will log off from here, end the live stream, and then in about an hour or so, let me just check. Yeah, in about an hour, I will jump into the community forum as well, and see if we can connect up a few folks who might still be individually participating online. So join there if you're looking for a team as well. And otherwise, we'll be hacking away and see what comes up. So let me see if there is. Yes. So let's go and make some awesome hackathon projects happen this weekend. And I'm super excited to see you tomorrow, Sunday, and also afterwards, looking at your projects. Thanks for joining.
Just to confirm, the submission is free and
Indeed.